In 1939, German tank production increased, and the Soviet Air Force revived a long-standing specification for a tank-killer ground attack aircraft. Ilyushin designed the Sturmovik as a two-seater, but Stalin wanted a single-seater, and he had his way. Even when that proved to be a mistake, and it was obvious that a rear gunner was necessary, Stalin refused to allow the production lines to be slowed to make the necessary modifications. In December 1941, he severely rebuked the directors of two Sturmovik factories about their slow rate of Sturmovik production. In a telegram to each, he said, "You have let down your country and our Red Army. You are still not facilitating the production of IL-2s. The IL-2 is as vital to our army as air or bread. Do not make the government lose its patience. This is my last warning. Stalin." Eventually, in mid-1942, the two-seater version entered service, and the Sturmovik began to make its full impact on the Great Patriotic War. The main feature of the Sturmovik was a thick armor plating that protected its underbelly and 1,300 horsepower inline engine. The armor plating was steel, about 2,000 pounds of it, and it gave the Sturmovik its other nickname, the Flying Tank. The plating was not an external shell. It was an integral stress-bearing part of the aircraft structure. It was like a metal bathtub on the underside of the plane, providing a barrier to enemy ground fire. A young Soviet airman wrote that it had a sort of monumental strength. In it, you felt protected against all dangers during operations under enemy fire. With the arrival of the two-seater version in the battlefield, the pilot could feel even more secure. In January and February 1943, when the two-seater Sturmovik was still a novelty, rear gunners shot down many Messerschmitts, whose pilots were used to finding the single-seater IL-2 fairly easy prey. The Sturmovik was built to last. Its takeoff weight was nearly 13,000 pounds, and on the rough ground it flew from all over the Soviet Union, its landing gear had to be unusually strong. Everything about the Sturmovik was aggressive. It bristled with weapons. It could carry 1,300 pounds of bombs and rockets, and the sight of a Sturmovik flying in low over the battlefield became the terror of German soldiers on the ground. Even the massive armor of German Panther and Tiger tanks could not withstand the Sturmovik's twin anti-tank cannon and air-to-ground rockets. In the Battle of Kursk in 1943, Sturmoviks destroyed 270 tanks of the 3rd Panzer Division and wiped out 70 tanks of the 9th Panzers in 20 minutes. The IL-2 Sturmovik was not an elegant aircraft. It was not fast, with a maximum speed of less than 300 miles an hour. It was not maneuverable because of its heavy construction and the weight of its armor. But on the battlefields of Russia, the Ukraine and the Crimea in the Great Patriotic War, it was the right aircraft for the job. In 1942 and 43, great Soviet factories, relocated beyond the reach of German bombers, poured out the steel for vehicles, armor, and weapons, and the stream of ammunition needed to fight a war on the vast scale of this one. Ammunition for foot soldiers, for artillery, for tanks, and for Sturmoviks, then arriving at battlefields at the rate of over 1,000 a month, a rate sustained throughout the last 3 years of the war. Sturmovik rear gunners knew their chances of survival were poor. 7 times more Sturmovik gunners died in battle than pilots. This was a bitter war, fought on home soil against a tough and ruthless enemy. Individual life became less important than mass resistance. Unless the weather was bad, Sturmoviks did not usually operate by themselves. Ground attack regiments fought as part of an overall battle plan and performed specific tasks in conjunction with infantry, artillery, and tank units on the ground. Flying alongside Sturmoviks in many of these operations was another legendary aircraft, an aircraft from another era. This is an air show to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Air Force of the Moscow Military District. Among the displays is a large radio-controlled scale model aircraft. It is a U-2, originally an Air Force trainer, designed by the young Nikolai Polikarpov in 1927. The U-2 remained in production from 1929 to 1954, and in that time more than 40,000 were built. It was a simple, sturdy biplane and was adapted for use as an air ambulance for spraying crops, and was fitted with floats and produced as a seaplane. When World War II began, the U-2 was adapted for military use and was given a new lease of life as a night artillery spotter. Others were fitted with loudspeakers for night propaganda missions.